The wind, a restless wanderer, sighed through the skeletal branches of the ancient oak, sending a cascade of crimson and gold leaves spiraling down. A solitary figure, Elias Thorne, stood on the crest of the hill, a dark silhouette against the horizon where the last embers of sunset battled the ascendant moon's silvery glow. He wasn't just observing the transition, he was absorbing it. Each breath a communion with the dying day and the nascent night. Elias was a man painted in shades of grey, his hair, the stubble on his jaw, the ever-present shadows beneath his eyes. He was a cartographer by trade, but a seeker by nature. Maps were his language, the contours of the world his obsession, yet he always felt like he was charting the surface while an ocean of mysteries churned beneath. He had come to this hill, as he often did, seeking solace from the cacophony of the world, hoping the quietude of nature could untangle the knots in his soul. Tonight, however, the usual calm was laced with an undercurrent of unease. The moon, swollen and pregnant with light, climbed higher in the inky expanse. Its pale luminescence painted the landscape in ethereal hues, transforming familiar shapes into ghostly apparitions. Elias felt a strange disconnect, as if he were both a part of the scene and an observer watching from afar. He glanced at the old pocket watch he usually carried, then at the moon, a strange, illogical feeling that the time was out of rhythm, was forming. Not physically, but something more. Something intrinsic to his being. He had been experiencing these odd temporal glitches for weeks. Moments of misplaced time. A fleeting second extending into an eternity, or a minute vanishing without a trace. It was unsettling, unnerving. He tried to rationalize it. Stress, exhaustion, even a touch of madness, but none of those explanations quite fit. Tonight, however, the feeling was more pronounced, amplified by the moonlit silence. He felt less like observing the natural rhythm of the night and more like being pulled into it. As the moon continued its ascent, a subtle shift occurred. The leaves, normally rustling in the breeze, fell silent. The crickets ceased their chirping. The air grew heavy, pregnant with an unspoken tension. Elias's breath hitched in his chest. He felt an invisible force, like a magnetic pull, tugging at him. He looked down towards the village nestled in the valley below, the lights from the houses twinkling like fallen stars. He felt a pull toward it, yet, a part of him felt frozen, compelled to stay where he was. Then came the whisper. It wasn't audible, not in the way most sounds are. It resonated within him, a vibration within his bones, a cold tendril snaking through his mind. The threads are loosening. The voice, if it could be called that, murmured. The veil is thinning. Elias's heart hammered against his ribs. He wasn't dreaming, he was wide awake. Painfully aware of the night, the moon, the unnerving stillness, and the voice, a voice which felt both utterly alien and strangely familiar. He tried to shake the feeling off, to dismiss it as some trick of the mind, but it clung to him like a shroud. He took a step forward, intending to go down to the village, but his foot landed, not on the soft earth, but on a hard, smooth surface. He looked down and a cold jolt ran through him. The ground he had been standing on was still there beneath him, but he was somewhere else. The ground at the crest of the hill had been substituted for something else, smooth, black, like polished obsidian. He shifted his weight, and felt as though he was walking on ice. This was not right. This was impossible. Panic flared in his chest. Hot and suffocating. The moon, now directly overhead, seemed to watch him with malevolent intent. The air crackled with an unseen energy, a palpable sense of wrongness. He wanted to turn back, too. Go back to the familiarity of the old hill, but the ground beneath him was different now. There was no going back. Then, figures began to emerge from the darkness. At first, they were just shadows, elongated and distorted by the moonlight. Then, they solidified, taking on grotesque humanoid forms. Their eyes, black as the void, fixed on him. Elias didn't feel fear, he felt a chilling acceptance of what was, and what was about to be. He felt like he'd been waiting for this. They moved silently, their movements fluid and unnatural, like figures in a dream. They surrounded him, their presence pressing in on him, taking away his breath. He could sense their thoughts, or something very much like them, a chaotic jumble of ancient desires and primeval urges. They were not human. They were not alive. Not in the traditional sense, anyway. He was no longer sure if he was on the hill, or somewhere else, or even if the moon he saw was the same one he watched from the hill earlier. The village below was gone, replaced by a swirling vortex of darkness. The voice spoke again, not in his mind alone, but all around him. "You cannot resist," it said, the words echoing through the hollows of his bones. "You are one of us now." Elias wanted to fight, wanted to scream, but fear had paralyzed him. He closed his eyes, accepting the inevitable. He surrendered to the darkness, to the moon, to the creatures that now claimed him. He felt himself being pulled apart, his essence dissolving, being reshaped. He was becoming something other. Something more. The wind, now a keening wail, picked up, swirling the leaves into a frenzy. The moon, indifferent to the chaos below, continued its celestial journey. The hillside, once the domain of a solitary man seeking quietude, was now a gateway, a bridge between worlds. The veil was indeed thinning, and Elias Thorne, the cartographer of maps, had unknowingly charted a course far beyond the terrestrial, a map leading to a place only the moon could understand. And as the light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, the only remnants of the night's events were a few stray leaves scattered across the hill, and the unsettling feeling that something, or someone, had been taken. The world went back to its usual rhythm, but the night had claimed its due, and nothing would ever be quite the same again. The quiet embrace of twilight on the hill was now a thing of nightmares, and no one in the village below noticed a thing. They were too busy with their lives, unaware that a man they knew was lost to something else. Only the moon bore witness.